Hey guys, Tom Barclay here, just outside Tottenham Hotspur's training ground, having just done Ange Postecoglou and Dejan Kulusevski's pre-match press conference for the Elfsborg game in the Europa League. So I'm just going to do one of those walk and talks back to the station to go through what was said. So let's start with Decky. Really good. I mean, we only generally get about 10 minutes with players for these press conferences. For the European games, that's when we get to speak to them in press conferences rather than just Ange. And you never know sometimes what you might get. Sometimes it might not be particularly interesting. But Kulusevski is someone that we speak to relatively frequently, probably more so than any other player actually, or up there with maybe Sonny in the mix zone. And he always has something to say. He's quite strident in his opinions. And I thought he was very interesting. I think the most interesting point, and definitely what I led on my write-up on today's press conference, was his very staunch defence of Ange Postecoglou. It was put to him specifically, why is he the right man still for Tottenham, given the form in the league and all the heat that's coming on Ange at the moment? And his reply was, because we have played perfect football in some games. Man United away, Man City, specifically the 4-0, was a... No worries, guys. Was a specific example in Dejan's mind of this alleged perfect football. And Man City away, it was. Say you want, I know Man City went on a terrible run after that, but that performance, whatever happens, will be one of the standout performances and results in Tottenham's recent history. And it was fantastic, and Kulusevski played a big part of it. So that was part of it. He said, we play for him. I have to fight for him because I believe in that football too. Kulusevski is someone who not only is probably the biggest success story of Ange Postecoglou's time at Spurs in terms of individual players. The way he's gone from being a good player, and on his days very good player, under Antonio Conte, to being one of the best players in the Premier League, I would argue, albeit not in the last few weeks. I would say, even for him, and his ultra fitness fatigue seems to have caught up with his performances. They haven't been quite at the sky-high standards of of what we saw a few months ago. But overall, particularly this season, he's been an unbelievable player. And I remember speaking to him in the Little Mix Zone in Singapore after the Lion City Sailors game during pre-season, after Ange had just taken over, speaking to Decky then, and he was talking about how much fun it was playing under him. Obviously quite a contrast to the drills that of shape that Conte generally had his team playing every day in training, but how much he enjoyed it. And he's been a complete sort of advocate for Ange's style ever since he's been here. I mean, I know you might say, well, it's rare that a player is going to criticise his manager, and that is definitely rare, but often it's about what they say or what they don't say that you can get a feel for how they really feel about the manager above them. But there is no two ways about it. Kulusevski loves Postecoglou's style of play. He loves playing in it, and you could tell from the way he spoke today. He said that, as I say, I have to fight for him because I believe in that football too. And he still thinks, like Postecoglou, that they can do good things in the last 4 months of the season. Now, I know there's lots of fans that are sort of losing faith or have lost faith to a certain extent with Postecoglou, but the fact of the matter is, despite the terrible league season that they're experiencing at the moment, they are still in all the cup competitions, including Europe. And so, in Kulusevski's mind, and definitely in Postecoglou's mind, there is still the chance there for something amazing to happen this season, and ending that what will be a 17-year-long wait for a trophy at Tottenham. And that's the way he feels about it. But he also didn't sugarcoat some of the issues they've had this season. And in fact, his comments are quite interesting, to the point where both I and another journalist sort of followed up on some of these comments. So he said that we've done mistakes, made mistakes. But then he said we are 10 or 11 fit players in 4 competitions, and that's not okay. That's why the team is paying the price in the league. You can look at the manager, the players, but it's bigger than that. You sort of wondered what he was kind of saying at that point. What point was he trying to make? So we followed up on it. I asked, what did you mean by that, really? And what, obviously Spurs haven't brought anyone in the transfer window so far. Is he talking about the squad depth? Is he talking about, wanting more players to come in? Or what's he talking about? And he answered that it was purely down to, just the fact that they've got all these injured players. And the point that Ange keeps making about when you're playing with these few players for so long, there's going to be a knock-on effect. That was what he was saying. At least that's how I interpreted it. I mean, fans can take from it what they want to, but that was kind of what I read from it. He was also specifically asked, with the transfer window not being far away from closing. Remember, it closes on the Monday this month, Monday, February the 3rd, rather than right at the end of January, so it got a bit longer than normal. Were you frustrated by the fact that there's not been anyone come through? And he walked away from that question very easily and said, look, you're picking to the wrong guy there. So if he is feeling any frustrations, if the squad is feeling any frustrations over a lack of outfield players coming in this month, he wasn't going to go and say it publicly. So there you go. He was also asked about that chant that we now hear basically every game now, which kind of encapsulates the love the fans have for Kulusevski, but also their lack of love, which is a bit of a euphemistic way of putting it, towards Daniel Levy, the chairman. We all know it. It goes, I don't care about Levy, he don't care about me, all I care about is Kulusevski. You hear it pretty much every game now. You heard it quite a bit at Leicester, in the horrible defeat against Leicester on Sunday, albeit I say there was much more sort of, rather than that being quite a fun way of them making their voices known, there was more sort of angry Levy out chants rather than that, but there was a bit of it, and like I said, there has been pretty much since, I'm trying to remember, maybe the Rangers game, definitely the Southampton game I heard it, so it's been going for a while, and it's one of those sort of earworms that gets stuck in your head. But I mean, for Kulusevski it must be kind of strange, because it's showing love for him, but it also puts him in a slightly awkward position because it's criticising the man who employs him too. And he was put to him specifically how he feels about it, and he was pretty diplomatic in his response. He said that I'm just playing. If they see what I give and appreciate it, it's even better. I'm happy with the love that I'm getting from the team, and that's it. So that was all he was going to go. He wasn't going to go down that road of potentially having any kind of comment to be made again about his employer, which is totally understandable. But it was put to him about a chant, which I thought was a worthy question, to be fair. And I asked him about the atmosphere on particularly Sunday, or just atmospheres generally when it's been pretty a lot of anger from the stands and chants, and how maybe it has if the players feel it. Because I did an interview with Michel Vaughan the other day, and he said he thought that you could see the players were sort of struggling with the pressure that was coming from the stands, which I think is unfair really, but that was his opinion, so I thought it was worth asking. And he basically said that he understands that the fans are frustrated, and it's trust him, it's even more frustrating for the players, and you can feel it when the energy is not the best, but that is life, and that's what winners, the way they do is they find a way, they get past it, and he's not using it as an excuse at all. So that was probably the most relevant parts of the Kulusevski press conference. There were other bits as well which were quite interesting. How he was put to him whether was there a danger of the Spurs squad sort of almost being complacent when it came to the league, given how it's going in that competition and the fact there are opportunities for the cup, and he pushed back on that as you'd expect he would. And he also talked about being a dad. And how that's changed his life to a certain extent. Well, obviously a massive extent, as any father will know. And there were some other bits, and he just spoke really well. So just on to Ange, I suppose the top lines from it, as is always the case at this stage of the transfer window, did relate to transfers. He said it'd be disingenuous to say there was anything more than nothing imminent right now, but traditionally in the last few days of the window are always frenetic, and I'd expect us to be involved in that. He said that everyone was trying their utmost. He doesn't think anyone is sort of working against him or wants him to fail, when he was asked whether he felt like he was properly supported. But yeah, it seems like he expects it to be a busy end to the window. Whether that ends up bringing anyone in or bringing one player in, two players in, he wasn't going to go and commit to that. He didn't want to put himself in a difficult position and sort of promise something that maybe couldn't be delivered. But he is expecting something to sort of, at least efforts to be made to try and sign players. And no matter what you might think, my understanding at least is that that is the case with the club. They are trying to make transfers happen. It just nothing has happened so far, and it remains to be seen whether something will or not. And I guess we'll have to judge it when the end window closes closes and see what we think at that point. I actually asked him about the wages situation, because you might have seen the Deloitte report last week about how Spurs are the ninth richest club in the world, but also how their wage turnover has gone down in recent years, and how other clubs, including the likes of Aston Villa and various other teams, and obviously the sort of traditional other big six hitters, are all paying more in wages. And I basically put it to him like, how hard is it to compete against those clubs that you're expected to compete against when you're paying less in wages? And he didn't go anywhere near it. He just said, I'd be overstepping my mark by commenting on it, and it's better if others at the club speak on that. Obviously we're not unlikely to get a chance to do that, but I thought it was worth asking anyway, because even if you think it's difficult putting a manager in that position to ask those kind of questions, we don't get a chance to ask those questions to those people. So that's why I feel like, we have to. If Ange is the only person we get to really speak to publicly most of the weeks. I mean, it's very rare that we get to speak to the higher ups in a season, to be honest. So that's just part of the course of being a manager in the Premier League. Let's go in Tottenham. It's the same all other clubs, and it's funny how, in other countries like Italy in particular, there are other people that are used to speaking regularly to the media. Fabio Paratici was a prime example of that at Juventus. He used to speak to the media every week. And then as soon as he comes to England, he doesn't speak at all. That's just the culture we have here. Whether that's right or wrong, it's a frustration for fans, it's a frustration for journalists, trust me. It means that we end up having to ask these difficult questions to the manager, because they're the only people we get to speak to, and we often know the answer is not going to be something that's going to be particularly illuminating, because they don't want to be put in that position. So yeah, it's a bit of a kind of shadow boxing that gets nowhere, but it's something that a lot of fans have been talking about, and it feels like those questions have to be asked. Anyway, in terms of returns, so the big news, team news, I suppose, is Mickey van der Ven is back. He has been training for the last 7 to 10 days, apparently. He will get minutes, or the plan is to give him minutes. Whether that means from the off or not, we'll wait to see. And I asked him whether, because obviously he came back for the Chelsea game, he got injured again, and a lot of fans are sort of pointing that as being a potential mistake. Same with Romero. How wary is Ange of doing that again? And he said, look, I'm not wary. Got to play him at some point. He's been training for a while now. He's ticked all the boxes, and he's ready. So we're going to go with it. So that was the answer about Van der Ven, and you can understand that. He's needed. He's a huge player for this team. They need him. The centre-backs, the way him and Romero play, I think we've really seen in recent weeks, as well as Archie Gray has tried to fill in, and as Dragozin has played. Those two are quite key to the way Spurs play overall. And his return cannot come soon enough, I suppose, as long as he stays fit. On that note, James Maddison, 2 to 3 weeks apparently, calf strain, suffered at Hoffenheim, so he's the latest one to sort of be injured. We've also got Sarr and Bissouma are okay, apparently. Sarr's got a bit of a niggle, but he is apparently okay. Romero apparently is a bit of a slow burner and not on the horizon for the weekend, apparently. He was still in the gym today of the open training session. Vicario was training, but there was no mention of him in the press conference, so I don't know. So my count is, if you do include him, it's 10 players out in terms of 7 injured, 3 ineligible. I'm not including Yang because he's off to QPR. Apparently, Ange basically said on loan. Ange said it was a chance for him to adapt, to settle in England. And that pretty much wraps it up. So Elfsborg, big game. Once again, a chance to finish in the top 8, which would mean that they would go directly to the last 16, avoid a playoff in February, a pesky playoff in February, and 2 extra games, which they really don't need right now. So it is a big game, but also at the same time, they are probably likely to be, they are through, even if they lose. So maybe not quite as big as some of the other matches of late. And as for a starting lineup, I'd probably go Brandon Austin in goal, Porro, Dragozin. I think Van der Ven might start being a centre-back. Maybe he goes in straight away and gets half the game, perhaps. Archie Gray at left-back. I reckon Bissouma, Bentancur and Bergvall. I think Sarr maybe starts on the bench given his niggle. Davis as well, I think maybe starts on the bench given he's played a lot recently coming back from injury. And I'm thinking Kulusevski, Richarlison and Son. But obviously Mikey Moore has a big chance of him playing too. So we'll wait to see. Anyway, guys, I'll speak to you after the game. Thanks very much.